Thank you for tuning in to the Hope.Strength.Courage podcast, love and support for parents whose kids are fighting for their lives. A weekly podcast created to support parents and caregivers of children diagnosed with cancer, where you will find resources collected to help you face each day with hope, strength, and courage. From interviews with the top experts in their fields, doctors, psychologists, chaplains, and inspiring frontline workers in pediatric oncology as they share their best advice, as well as day-to-day advice collected from other cancer moms and leaders in personal growth and development. From individuals who understand how hard it can be, I hope you will feel better prepared to cope with the day-to-day challenges of caring for your child. Hi, I am Laura Lane, and I am your host. My own daughter Celeste was diagnosed with cancer at the age of 12. In 2015, I wrote about our experiences in the book, Two Mothers, One Prayer, Facing Your Child's Cancer with Hope, Strength, and Courage. Since that time, I have dedicated thousands of hours to share with other parents and caregivers the resources, tools, tips, and skills and strategies I learned that helped our family stay happier, healthier, and more hopeful. My goal is to share with you my interviews with experts to support you as you care for a child with cancer. Thank you for joining me this week for part 2 of my interview with Dr. Geoff McCowich. Dr. Geoff is a pediatric oncologist at the Children's Hospital at Westmead in Sydney, Australia. He is a principal investigator for clinical trials within the Children's Oncology Group. He has a particular clinical interest in neuro-oncology and sarcomas of bone and soft tissue. He has been an attending pediatric oncologist for 20 years. As Dr. Geoff, he hosts a podcast that is aimed at parents of children with cancer. Please join me as we continue our discussion on how to get the best help from our medical team when our child is first diagnosed with cancer. In this part of the interview, I had asked Dr. Geoff what was his best advice for parents, and he talks about the importance of resilience and patience and the fabulous resource he has put together for his patient families by creating his podcast, Understanding Childhood Cancer with Dr. Geoff. I hope you will enjoy this interview as much as I did.
Well, so now we're going into this. We're not feeling guilty. We're not feeling angry, except at the universe or God or something, or this lightning bolt that's hit your child. We're embarking on this big program. Well, what I'd say is that treating childhood cancer is pretty all-consuming. And if you can sort of believe me on that at the start, that'll help. You know, I think that just plan on your life being totally messed up this year, probably. Maybe a bit shorter, maybe a bit longer, depends on the disease. It's going to be totally messed up, but it won't go on forever. I'd remind you that a lot of people have been down this path. People get through it. You know, people who are, highly trained intellectual professionals, people who are regular people in regular jobs, all sorts of people, they get through it. Teams there to help. It is manageable. It might be a terrible time. It'll probably be a terrible time. It won't be terrible every day. There'll be moments of joy, moments of relief. There'll be better days and worse days. So, I think it's best if you can adopt a mindset of, we've got this mission to complete. We're going to get our child through chemotherapy. Think of it as a big project, a big mission. Think of it the way an Olympic athlete thinks about those next Olympics. And, they'll go to the movies sometimes and they'll go out for dinner, but it's a single-minded focus on that. Think about big exams you're sitting to become something at college or university, and think about it that way, that this is what you're about for these several months, and, don't buy Bruce Springsteen tickets or Taylor Swift or, lock in things. You're going to need to be flexible and able to change your plans, and everything will go pear-shaped, and you'll end up in hospital sometimes, and maybe you won't. And, it's just sort of accept that this is your mission for this time. Now, that's easy for me to say. I know there's other kids in the family, there's husbands and wives, and they might live 5 hours from the major centre and 10 hours from the major centre. It's easy for me to say, this is tough. I don't mean to minimise it, but just accept that's how it's going to be a bit, that this is my mission and this is what we're going to do, and then take all the help that everyone offers you. So, I don't know. Laura, do you have much surf and waves in Canada?
We do on the coast.
Yeah. Okay. Well, think about, I don't know, we do in Australia, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
The first few times you get stuck at the bottom of a big wave, you're getting totally pummeled and tumbled and, all you can see is sandy water and you look around, if you do open your eyes and you panic and you freak out, like, what's happening here and so on. But after a while, within reason, you learn this is going to be okay. And you just sort of roll with it. The wave hits you, you think, oh, yeah, great, here we go. You get tumbled, you get buffeted from side to side, all over, but it ends. And you've been there before. Well, you haven't with childhood cancer chemotherapy, but with waves. And you just sort of let it toss you around and you know that you're going to come out the other side. So, if the wave's too big, you won't, I suppose. There are limits to this, but that sense of rolling with it, letting it toss you around, and that's how it's going to be for a while. And I wish we could change it. I wish we had drugs where you just took tablets and went back to school and everything was good, and maybe one day we will. But for now, that's what I'd say. Yeah.
I think that's a great analogy of the waves that the first round of chemo for my daughter, when she did the high dose chemo and stem cell rescue for her pineoblastoma. And that first round, yes, there's just so much to get used to. The second time round, you know what's coming. Okay, you know the pattern. And you know, okay, we have to go through this first and this next, and then we're going to have the day where every 15 minutes you've got to get up and go pee, and you've got to do that all night long, and you've got your day where you're going to be throwing up all day, and then there's the day that they give you the stem cell rescue, and it smells like cream corn in the room all day, and you've got your transfer from one room over to isolation, and you get used to the pattern, and it becomes a little easier that you become prepared for it.
That's it. And then something comes out of left field that didn't happen the first time, and you just got to stay resilient somehow. Now, I'll admit it. I don't think normal human beings are built to handle this. Okay, I think this is more than most people are built to handle, but somehow they do. Which reminds me of another point: is social workers. Pediatric oncology units are normally well-staffed with social workers. And I don't know what the dynamic is in Canada and US, but I guess there might be a mindset that identifies having a social worker with, someone who isn't thriving in life more broadly, let's say.
Right.
But believe me, you need a social worker. I don't care if you're the CEO of a multinational corporation billionaire, you need a social worker, all right? You've got emotions just like everyone else. They're not just there to sort out public housing or something. It's about support and emotional support. And, the doctors can't always be there, and the nurses, and plus the social workers know more about counselling and psychology and all that. You need a social worker. Don't be too proud, okay, to have a social worker.
We had a terrific social worker that she someone in the universe, God handpicked her for us, that she was just terrific, was exactly what we needed to get through so many difficulties.
So you agree with what I'm saying then?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Special people.
Yeah.
And, they're not getting the big bucks either, but they're just seriously committed and they're there for you.
Yeah. Yeah. That reaching out and connecting and looking for those other resources are so important.
Absolutely. That's right.
Yeah. So, any other advice?
I would, I'd be careful of the internet.
Okay.
There's a lot of people putting a lot of stuff on the internet. some of it's useful, some of it's not. Some of it is more about adult situations. Some of it is, there are some sites you'll go to and sort of automatically will accumulate people where the treatment hasn't been successful and isn't going well, and people are seeking support from others, and that's fine. But it would be wrong to assume that, the dynamic you see there is the one that surrounds every child with cancer, or every child even with your child's particular type of cancer. So be a bit careful, but by all means have a look, and your doctors will be able to point you in the direction of, I guess, more reputable sites. But so be a bit careful.
Yeah.
And be a bit careful about people who'll, give their advice, too readily, give an opinion too readily.
Yeah.
If you want a
second with a grain of salt.
Well, that's it. Yeah. See, if I just get a one-liner email from somewhere and say, hey, what would you do? I tell them I would gather all the facts. I need all the data, right? It's anybody who's sort of too able to give their advice or an opinion on something without all the facts, and seeing the scans maybe, or hearing them described from a reputable source, you've got to be a bit careful. So, by all means, ask your doctors, can I get a second opinion? If you want. Now, pediatric oncologists, by the way, typically, pretty academic types. They're normally in the thick of clinical trials, which means they're going to conferences and meetings where, people who live and breathe Wilms tumour are there, and people who live and breathe Ewing sarcoma. They're on trials that, mostly in the big academic centres, you're going to find the treatment in one place and another place is likely to be the same. So I don't think every patient needs to go out seeking a second opinion. Having said that, if you want to do that, you won't hurt your doctor's feelings. We've been asked a million times, I'd like to get a second opinion. And, we know it's the family's right to do that if they want. But the best way to get a second opinion is with all the facts provided by your doctor. Right? All the details, all the things that you might not be able to convey in lay speak, you need to get. So, again, I don't want to encourage everyone to go getting second opinions, but, I can't buy a new golf club without getting 7 opinions. So I get it. People might do that. But if you're going to, do it properly with the cooperation of your team, and you won't hurt their feelings. And if you do, well, too bad. It's your right. Yeah. Okay? Yeah. What else would I say? I think I would encourage you to sort of adopt a cooperative mentality in working with the team.
Okay.
You will find frustrations. There'll be times when your scan gets cancelled because a more urgent one came up. There'll be times when you sit around waiting for hours for someone, and sometimes hospitals are just understaffed and under-resourced, and sometimes the surgeon got stuck for 4 hours or 10 hours. Public hospital systems and probably private ones are fraught with complexity and demands. It's soul-destroying. It's, you're going to see your child sick and vomiting and, for some reason there's a delay in ordering the drug. You're going to encounter all this stuff, and I would blow my stack, I expect. I'd probably be the worst, but I just encourage you to try to be patient with everyone and speak up when you need to, but, really try a cooperative mentality. Like I said, these nurses are precious to us. I've got a vested interest here. I don't want too many of them burned out and leaving because when I get a call at 2 a.m. from one of those nurses, they're precious. They've seen it all. Yep. They know this isn't right. So, we're all part of a big team, and try to stay cooperative and level-headed, but, you're going to melt down at some point. All right, we're all human, and people in paediatrics have been there before. We've seen it all. Melt down by all means. Try to stay civil. Yeah. But, we all understand, but, I think they're my thoughts for now.
Well, terrific. Okay. So I'd love to hear more about your podcast. So tell me, about your podcast, what led you to do it, and what has been the outcome or benefits of doing this.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So my podcast, Understanding Childhood Cancer with Dr. Geoff. And you've got to spell Geoff properly, the sort of English Australian way, Geoff.
Right.
Not Jeff. That's sort of for fast bowlers and racing car drivers, in my opinion. So Geoff. Now, and you can get it at, you go to iTunes and you subscribe to the podcast, and there it is. Mm-hmm. Or you go to SoundCloud, that's a website, the same thing, and you can find it. And it's free. Well, what made me do it? A couple of things. One is people say I'm good at explaining things, that they all say, oh, yeah, you made that complicated subject, interpretable. So that's what people say. Okay. Second thing is we talk to parents at diagnosis, and we've got to talk about the big picture, right? Mm-hmm. What it is. What are our chances? What's the overall strategy, right? Is my child going to make it? Big stuff. Mm-hmm. But we have to talk about practicalities too, what sort of central line are we going to put in, Mm-hmm. What's an MRI scan? What's an MIBG scan? All those sort of practicality things we have to deal with now. And, from those sort of initial discussions, I'd really like parents to go away with the big picture without me getting, caught up in all these minutiae.
Right.
So I'd rather talk big picture and then say, now, we're going to need a central line. Can you please listen to this, and you'll hear all about it, and then we can talk about it. So this way they can go away with the big picture. Mm-hmm. They can catch their breath, somehow put themselves back together, and then listen to these few things I've said. Can you please listen to this and hear about it, and then we'll talk about it more, and our nurse educator will talk about it more, and we'll all talk about it more. But, in the comfort of their own home or hospital bed. Right. And also it's sort of good for me because I sort of know it's a source I can trust. Yeah. And because I wrote it. Well, I didn't write it, I just talked it. What else? We've for a long time given written information to parents, and a nurse educator's gone over things and so on. Mm-hmm. I sort of feel like you need a bit of something that's slightly opinionated, has a bit of a judgment, something you can convey with voice that you can't convey in writing. You can have a list of side effects. These side effects are common but mild. These side effects are this but serious, You can read all that, but I feel like with a voice you can give it some nuance, give it some perspective, reassure certain patients that this only applies in this situation, a whole lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. Takes hours to go through it, have to sit there. And that's another thing, after 20 years of explaining two different types of central line to people, you sort of think, well, why don't I just record this? And so on. So there's that. And this is how modern people get their information these days, in large part, this sort of thing. So all of that led me to do it. Now, it's been quite fun. And I've got this program that tracks how many downloads and, what cities it's downloaded in. And, it's been pretty well received. There's, people in Canada, people in the United States, someone in Oman, Italy, all over the world. There's these people downloading these episodes. It's not exactly going viral. I don't have millions, but, bit by bit, and it's not like, a normal podcast, typically is a series, isn't it? Right. So episode 1 leads to episode 2, leads to episode 3, or else they're talking about current affairs, so Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, and it's got a currency. This is more like just a repository of episodes that are just there, and you can get all of them. So,
yeah, it sounds brilliant. It sounds brilliant because when you were saying before, when you get that first diagnosis, you're on overload. And you only retain a fraction of what's told you because you're still trying to process the first bit that, okay, my child has cancer, and the next 20 sentences the doctor said has gone one ear in one ear and out the other, because you're still stuck trying to process that first information. So having it where you could go back and, okay, press play, press pause now. I can only take in that much in the moment. Okay, now I can press play again and play it over again until you really understand it. That's brilliant.
That's it. I mean, you're telling this family, look, your child's got this tumor or something, and we're going to use chemotherapy. And then the next minute, this doctor's talking about sperm banking and ovaries and central lines and, ultrasounds of the heart. There's all this chaos. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's been fun. And for a while there, I didn't really associate it with my hospital because I didn't want to get stuck in a bureaucracy that has to, check everything and send it to legal and, Yeah. The other thing I've done is I've deliberately sort of avoided really controversial, nuanced areas, right? This is the basic information you need, not the fine details of should we give this dose or that dose. Because firstly, it's too hard. I have to become a super expert on the super detailed areas of everything. Well, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And also, I want you to get that from your doctors. This is sort of general resource. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, who knows your child.
That's right. Yeah. In context and is aware of, maybe your child has another condition, some abnormality of their kidneys or something, and that's why they're giving this drug and not that drug, all right? Yeah. Or, some other reason for things. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to say this is what you got to do. I want to say this is what doctors might talk about, and provide general information.
Yeah, well, that's great. That's awesome. Thank you for everything you've been sharing. My last question for you is, what website can we send our audience to so that they can learn more about you and your podcast, your work? Where would you like people to go to learn more?
Okay, so, I don't have a very well-developed internet space, but I have a Facebook page.
Okay.
So if you go to Facebook and then you just, you search for new contacts and you search for Understanding Childhood Cancer with Dr. Geoff, Geoff, you'll find the Facebook page. And that's where I sort of announce there's a new episode out there, and I invite people to comment or say if they like the episode or not, and I get a little bit, but not a huge amount. Mm-hmm. That's normal. That will provide a place where you can then find the episodes from that Facebook page.
Perfect.
And again, if you just wanted to go and get these podcasts, so if you went to iTunes, if you look on your iPhone, there normally comes with an app called Podcasts, purple app. Mm-hmm. If you hit that, and you got activated in settings sometimes anyways, and search for Understanding Childhood Cancer with Dr. Geoff and then subscribe to it, well, there you'll find all the episodes. Mm-hmm. And then, or else you can go to a website, just Google SoundCloud, and then look in there for Understanding Childhood Cancer with Dr. Geoff, and you'll find it. Sure. And, and then listen to it. Now that it's sort of a bit back to front, you want to listen to the very early episodes first.
Right.
Because and it's the later episodes where I'm sort of, I've run out of content, so I'm getting into less basic stuff that may or may not be relevant to you. But it's those early episodes, central lines, why the doctors are obsessed with fevers, what to do about vomiting, side effects and, different drugs. That's where you'll find it in the earlier episodes.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah. That's brilliant. So we'll make sure to put that link at the bottom of this interview when it's posted.
Oh, well, thank you, Laura.
So that would be great.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been fun. I look forward to seeing the project when it comes out, and that'll be exciting.
Well, thank you so much.
I'd like to reiterate what I said in last week's episode. That was so refreshing to hear such down-to-earth, behind-the-scenes advice from Dr. Geoff. His reminder to have patience, put things into perspective, and recognize that, like an Olympic athlete, we need to focus and brace ourselves for the year ahead. That it's all hands on deck, and while we might be in for a bumpy ride, we can get through this. You are not alone. You have a team to support you, and that team has a great deal of experience. They can be a great resource for you if you let them. I hope you will join me next week when I will be sharing my interview with Reverend Kevin Ross of Unity Sacramento, as he shares the importance of surrounding yourself with community during this challenging time. Before we end our show today, we have one last segment. Over the last few years, I have asked other cancer moms what advice they wish they had known when their child was first diagnosed. I have compiled this information and will be sharing their advice each week. You can download the top 101 pieces of advice that I put together as a mini ebook at twomothers1prayer.com. Today's advice comes from Shelley, who says, "You are not alone. Once we were going to clinic and meeting other families going through the same thing, it was such a huge burden of relief. I felt so alone and terrified. It was another mom who found me crying in the hallway who gave me hope, more so even than the doctors and nurses. And to ask for and accept help. You don't have to be strong and take it all on yourself." Thank you, Shelley, for sharing that. If you have advice you have learned along the way that you wish someone had told you weeks, months, or years earlier, I invite you to fill out the contact form on our website, twomothers1prayer.com, and I will be sharing your advice with our listeners on future shows. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule today to listen to the Hope, Strength, Courage podcast. I look forward to sharing more experts and advice with you again next Wednesday. Please remember to take a minute to subscribe to the show. Thanks also need to go out to our Hope, Strength, Courage production team, which consists of my wonderful assistant, Tracy Ogilvie McDonald, Andrew Braun at Braun Audio and Audio Geek, music by Fizz Anthony, social media support by Marife Constantino, and graphic design by Amy Hosmer. To learn more about myself, Laura Lane, and to order my book, please visit lauralane.ca.